April 2018. The fluorescent lights of the United States Congress illuminate a pale, tense face. Mark Zuckerberg, seated on a heightening cushion that makes him appear taller, faces 44 senators. His mechanical, almost robotic responses are repeated over and over. "Senator, I'll check with my team and get back to you." The air conditioning hums as millions watch the live stream. The young man who once programmed his pajamas in his college dorm must now explain how the data of 87 million users ended up in the hands of Cambridge Analytica. His dark suit contrasts with his skin glistening with sweat. Camera flashes capture every blink, every awkward gesture. But this image of the corner businessman is just the latest glimpse into a story that began decades ago in a quiet New York suburb, where a boy with a fascination for strategy games was about to create the world's largest chessboard. 1984. White Plains, a leafy suburb north of Manhattan, is the perfect setting for a traditional American childhood. In a comfortable two-story house, Karen and Edward Zuckerberg raise 4 children. She is a psychiatrist. He is a dentist with an office on the ground floor of the same family home. Mark Elliott Zuckerberg was born on May 14th of that year. He was a second son, surrounded by 3 sisters, Randy, Donna, and Ariel. The house smells of toothpaste and medical textbooks. On weekends, the family watches classic movies together, especially the Godfather films, which young Mark memorizes scene by scene. Edward Zuckerberg notices something peculiar about his son. While other children play with building blocks, Mark disassembles toys to understand their inner workings. At 10 years old, he's no longer interested in toys. He's interested in computers. 1996. The era of dial-up internet fills homes with the characteristic crackle of telephone connections. Edward installs a Quantex computer with a Pentium processor in the dental office. The intention is to manage appointments and patient files. But Mark has other plans. The 12-year-old boy spends hours at that desk, illuminated by the blue glow of the CRT monitor. He teaches himself basic programming, devouring technical manuals as if they were adventure novels. His father, impressed but confused, hires David Newman, a software developer, to give him private lessons. Newman arrives each week with the intention of teaching, but he quickly discovers that his young student absorbs concepts in minutes that take others weeks. It wasn't so much teaching him as just keeping up with him. He would recall years later. Mark creates his first program, ZuckNet. It's a primitive messaging system that connects the home computers with the dental office downstairs. When a patient arrives, the receptionist sends an instant notification without having to shout upstairs. It's rudimentary, but functional. More importantly, it's his first social network. 1998. Mark enters Ardsley High School as a skinny teenager with curly hair and piercing eyes. While his classmates obsess over sports and dating, he becomes obsessed with coding. At night, he programs until dawn, surviving on cans of Red Bull and cold pizzas. During their second year, Mark and a colleague named Adam D'Angelo created Synapse Media Player, a music-playing software powered by artificial intelligence. The program studies the user's listening habits and creates personalized playlists. It was 2000, and this idea foreshadowed what Spotify would do a decade later. Microsoft and AOL approach him with takeover offers. They offer 6-figure sums and jobs. For a teenager, it's a tempting fortune. Mark rejects it all. Money isn't the goal. It never will be. 2000. Mark transfers to Phillips Exeter Academy, an elite boarding school in New Hampshire. The red brick buildings and immaculate lawns exude tradition and privilege. The children of senators, executives, and heirs to fortunes attend the school. Mark feels out of place, but not uncomfortable. While other students boast family ancestry, he impresses with lines of code. He joins a fencing team, a sport of strategy and anticipation that resonates with his mathematical mind. He also obsesses over Latin and ancient Greek, dead languages that reveal pure linguistic patterns. It's here that he meets Priscilla Chan, a young student of Chinese Vietnamese descent waiting in line for the bathroom at a fraternity party. The encounter is brief but memorable. Mark, never socially adept, tries to impress her with information about his impending expulsion from campus for violating minor rules. It doesn't work. Yet, Spring of 2002. College acceptance letters arrive like the verdict of fate. Mark is accepted to Harvard, the most prestigious institution in the United States. He also receives offers from Princeton and MIT. The decision is obvious. Harvard represents the pinnacle of American academic achievement. But there's another reason. Harvard is the birthplace of Microsoft. Bill Gates left those same classrooms to build a tech empire. History repeats itself in cycles, and Mark feels the pull of that pattern. His parents celebrate with a family dinner. Edward proudly toasts. Karen smiles with tears in her eyes. Mark, however, is already thinking about what's next. Harvard isn't a destination. It's a launching pad. September 2002. Cambridge, Massachusetts. The Harvard campus vibrates with the energy of the fall semester. Golden leaves fall on cobblestone paths as students carry heavy backpacks towards centuries-old classrooms. Mark settles into Kirkland House, a one-bedroom apartment overlooking the Charles River. His room, H33, is small, with cream-colored walls and a window that lets in diffuse light. A single bed, a wooden desk, a cheap swivel chair, and, most importantly, a Dell computer with a high-speed Ethernet connection. The first few weeks are a whirlwind of introductory classes: psychology, computer science, applied mathematics. Mark attends, takes minimal notes, and disappears into his room. While his classmates socialize at bars and parties, he programs. His roommate, Dustin Moskovitz, watches with fascination and concern. Mark can spend 18 hours in front of the screen without moving, mesmerized by lines of code that flow from his fingers like water from a spring. October 2002. Mark launches Course Match, an app that allows Harvard students to see what classes their friends are taking and make enrollment decisions based on social connections. It's simple. Enter your name, select your courses, and see who else is enrolled. The app spreads across campus like wildfire. Within a week, hundreds of students are using it. Within 2 weeks, it's part of their daily academic planning routine. Mark doesn't charge anything. He's not looking for a profit. He just wants to see if it works, if people really want this digital connectivity. The answer is a resounding yes. But Course Match is just a warm-up. Mark is already thinking bigger, more ambitious, more controversial. October 28, 2003. 9 p.m. Mark sits at his desk with a beer in his hand and frustration brewing. He's just ended a brief relationship with a girl. The breakup wasn't dramatic, but it leaves him restless, bored, and looking for distraction. He opens his personal blog and writes, "I'm a little drunk. I won't lie." The words flow unfiltered. He decides to create something to burn off the nervous energy. Face Mash, a website that displays photos of 2 students side by side, and asks, "Who is hotter?" To get the photos, he hacks into the databases of 9 Harvard residential buildings, downloading student ID images. It's illegal, he knows. It's invasive, he also knows. But he's bored, and technical curiosity overrides moral judgment. Face Mash launches at 10 p.m. Mark sends a link to some friends. They forward it, and so the domino effect begins. At midnight, 450 users are on the site simultaneously. By 2 a.m., 22,000 votes have been recorded. Traffic is clogging Harvard's network. University servers are creaking under the unexpected load. Students across campus are voting obsessively, comparing faces in a digital popularity contest. But the euphoria is short-lived. At 2 a.m., the Harvard administration blocks the site. Complaints pour in. Feminist groups denounce sexism. Privacy organizations point to the data breach. Mark has crossed a line. At 4 a.m, university officials knock on his door. Mark opens the door with red eyes and disheveled hair. He shows no remorse, only technical curiosity. How much traffic did the server handle before it went down? Will this scandal be the end of his career at Harvard, or just the beginning of something no one can anticipate? November 2003. Mark faces a Harvard Board of Trustees in a stark conference room. 6 professors and administrators stare at him with stern expressions. The charges are clear: breach of security, violation of privacy, unauthorized distribution of university materials. Mark, sitting with his shoulders hunched and his hands clasped, listens silently. He doesn't try to justify himself with elaborate excuses. He simply explains the technical logic behind face mash, as if he were defending a computer science thesis rather than his academic future. The board places him on academic probation. One more false step, and he'll be expelled. It's a serious warning that should scare him. But as he walks back to his dorm under the gray New England sky, Mark can think of only one thing. Face mash proved that people desperately want to connect and compare themselves. The site was crude, ethically questionable, but revealed a fundamental truth about human behavior. Late November 2003, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, 6'6" identical twins, row the Charles River with the precision of synchronized machines. They are Olympic athletes, economic students, and heirs to a family fortune. They also have an idea. Together with Divya Narendra, they have conceptualized Harvard Connection, a social network exclusively for university students. But they are missing a crucial piece, a talented programmer. Names are circulating, and Mark Zuckerberg emerges as the most promising, especially after the face mash incident. They meet at a cafe near campus. The twins, impeccably dressed in turtleneck sweaters, explain their vision, an online student directory where students can connect based on classes, interests, and social circles. Mark listens, nods, and agrees to help. But something doesn't add up. As you listen, your mind is already designing a different, more elegant, more addictive version. You don't tell them this, of course. You simply promise to get to work. December 2003. Mark returns to Dobbs Ferry, New York, for the holidays. The family home is decorated with Christmas lights, and the aroma of freshly baked cookies wafts from the kitchen. But Mark barely leaves his room. He spends days programming, surviving on sandwiches his mother leaves at the door. The Winklevosses email him asking about the progress of Harvard Connection. Mark responds vaguely, promising updates soon. But he's not working on your project. He's building his own. Lines of code sprout on the screen like rapidly growing plants. Databases, user interfaces, authentication systems. Every function is interconnected in an elegant, scalable architecture. There's no eureka moment, no flash of cinematic inspiration, just accumulated hours of obsessive work, driven by the conviction that you're building something meaningful. The date will go down in technological history. Mark returns to Harvard after the holidays with something new on his laptop, the Facebook.com. The site is minimalist. A white background, simple blue letters, and an amateurish logo. Users register with Harvard University emails, upload a profile photo, and fill out basic information. Name, year of graduation, academic major, and interests. They can then search for other students, add them as friends, and view the connections they share. There are no post walls yet. There's no like button. Just static profiles connected by digital threads of friendship. It's fundamentally simple, and that simplicity is its genius. At 6 o'clock in the evening on February 4th, Mark hits enter, and the site launches. He sends a link to some friends at Kirkland House with a casual message. Check this out. February 5th, 250 users sign up in the first 24 hours. Mark and Dustin Moskovitz monitor traffic from their bedroom, watching the numbers increase in real time. It's addictive, almost hypnotic. February 6th, 650 users. The platform spreads throughout Kirkland House, then to adjacent houses. Students constantly update their profiles, adding details, searching for classmates, confirming friendships. February 8th, 1,200 users. Nearly half of Harvard students are registered. Mark barely sleeps, answering emails, fixing bugs, adding small features. Dustin officially joins as co-founder, helping with technical operations. February 11th, 2,600 users. Facebook is the dominant topic of conversation in lunchrooms and classrooms. Professors mention it in class. The student newspaper, the Harvard Crimson, publishes a featured article. Mark reads the article in his room with a faint smile. This isn't like face mash. This is different. This is real. Mid-February 2004, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss discover the Facebook and are furious. From their perspective, Mark stole their idea while pretending to work at Harvard Connection. They meet with lawyers, file a formal complaint with the university administration, and begin pushing for legal action. The accusations are serious: theft of intellectual property, violation of a verbal agreement, unfair competition. Mark responds coldly. From his perspective, he created something completely different. Harvard Connection was a basic directory. Facebook is a living, breathing, ever-evolving social network. Superficial similarities hide fundamental differences. The dispute will drag on for years, turning into a legal saga that will reach the federal courts. But right now, Mark doesn't have time to worry. He has a platform that's growing faster than he ever anticipated. Late February 2004, Facebook arrives at Columbia University in New York. It's the first expansion outside Harvard, a crucial experiment. Will the magic work on another campus? The answer arrives within hours. Columbia students register en masse, mirroring Harvard's fervor. Mark observes the data with analytical fascination. The behavioral patterns are identical. People want to connect, compare, and validate themselves digitally. March arrives, and the Facebook expands to Stanford, Yale, and other elite universities. Each launch generates the same frenzy. Demand is insatiable. Mark and his small team work around the clock maintaining servers, moderating content, and adding features. Eduardo Saverin, a fellow Harvard student, joins as co-founder and CFO. Tall, charismatic, and from a wealthy Brazilian family, Eduardo brings what Mark lacks: business skills and startup capital. He invests $18,500 of his own money to cover server costs and legal operations. In return, he receives 30% ownership of the company. Mark retains 51%. Dustin and another friend, Chris Hughes, receive smaller percentages. The partnership works at first. Eduardo handles advertising sales. Mark focuses on programming. Dustin manages operations. But cracks are starting to appear. Eduardo wants to monetize aggressively. Mark wants to grow first, monetize later. The meetings become tense. Voices rise in the cramped dormitory. Eduardo argues they need money to survive. Mark argues they need users to be relevant. It's a philosophical clash that would define the company's future. June 2004. The semester ends and Mark faces a decision: return to Harvard in the fall or move the operation to Silicon Valley, the epicenter of technological innovation. The answer is obvious. He rents a house in Palo Alto, California, a stucco structure with a pool and enough space for computers and makeshift beds. Dustin, Chris Hughes, and several engineers move in with him. Eduardo remains in New York, supposedly managing business operations remotely. The house becomes headquarters, dormitory, and party center simultaneously. The walls are covered with motivational graffiti. Move fast and break things becomes the unofficial mantra. Beer bottles pile up in corners. The code is written constantly. Facebook now has 200,000 users across 34 universities. The growth is exponential, almost terrifying its speed. And they haven't even accepted a single cent of venture capital yet. One summer night, a scruffy young man with intense eyes shows up at the Palo Alto house. His name is Sean Parker, co-founder of Napster, the platform that revolutionized and nearly destroyed the music industry. At 24, Sean is already a controversial legend in Silicon Valley. He stumbles across Facebook by chance, finds Mark's profile, and invites himself over. The conversation flows instantly. Sean speaks with the speed of an auctioneer, jumping between ideas, strategies, warnings about predatory investors, and capital dilution. Mark listens, absorbing every word. Sean is charismatic, persuasive, and brings experience the team desperately needs. He also brings connections. He knows every major investor, every tech executive, every startup lawyer. Within weeks, Sean Parker becomes Facebook's president, guiding business strategy and investor negotiations. His influence is immediate and transformative. But as Facebook prepares to grow beyond imagination, one question remains. What will happen to Eduardo Saverin, the co-founder who is now 1,000 miles away, feeling increasingly excluded from critical decisions? September 2004. Eduardo Saverin flies from New York to Palo Alto, a mixture of anxiety and anger. The phone calls have become evasive, the emails vague. Something is happening without his knowledge. He arrives home to find a transformed operation. New engineers, new furniture, new energy. Sean Parker moves around the room like he owns the place. Eduardo feels like a guest in his own company. The meeting is brief and brutal. Mark, avoiding direct eye contact, explains that the ownership structure will be restructured. New shares will be issued to incoming investors. Eduardo can maintain his percentage if he contributes proportional additional capital. If he doesn't, his stake will be drastically diluted. Eduardo immediately understands. This is a ploy to get him out. His 30% stake will be reduced to less than 5%. Years later, this scene will be dramatized in courtrooms and movies, portrayed as either betrayal or business necessity, depending on the perspective. Eduardo leaves the house feeling betrayed, humiliated, and furious. The college friendship disintegrates in that moment. What remains is resentment and lawyers. August 2004, weeks before the confrontation with Eduardo, Sean Parker arranges a meeting with Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal and one of Silicon Valley's most influential investors. Thiel, a pale man with a penetrating gaze and radical libertarian views, sits in a Palo Alto cafe listening to Mark. The conversation is intellectual, even philosophical. They don't talk about quarterly earnings or marketing strategies. They talk about how social media can restructure human communication. Thiel asks a simple question: how much do you need? Mark replies, $500,000. It's a significant sum for a company with no real revenue. Thiel signs a check that same afternoon. It's his first major angel investment in Facebook, a bet that will multiply its value thousands of times over. But Thiel doesn't just bring money. He brings credibility. His backing attracts the attention of other investors, the media, and elite engineering talent. Facebook is no longer a university project, but a serious startup with the potential to transform industries. September 2005. Facebook reaches 5 million users at universities across the United States. But Mark sees the next horizon: high school students. The decision is controversial internally. Some argue that it will dilute the university exclusivity that makes Facebook special. Others fear security issues with underage users. Mark hears the objections and dismisses them. The expansion is ongoing. Within weeks, hundreds of thousands of teenagers flood the platform. Usage patterns shift. Teens post more photos, update statuses more frequently, and publicly dramatize relationships. Facebook becomes more colorful, more chaotic, more addictive. Critics who fear dilution were right about one thing: Facebook changes. But that change isn't a weakness. It's evolution. The platform is adapting to its audience rather than forcing its audience to adapt. October 2005. A small team of engineers is working on a feature that will change everything: the ability to easily upload and tag photos. Before this, sharing photos online was cumbersome. Sites like PhotoBucket and Flickr existed, but they required multiple steps and external links. Facebook integrates photos directly into profiles, allowing albums, friend tagging, and instant viewing. The feature launches without fanfare, but the impact is seismic. Within weeks, millions of photos are uploaded daily. College parties are now immortalized in public albums. Vacations are documented in real time. Faces are tagged, connecting people in visual networks. Mark looks at the statistics with satisfaction. The average time users spend on the site has doubled. Photos aren't just a feature. They're the driving force behind Facebook's addiction, transforming it from a useful directory into a must-see daily destination. Summer of 2006. Executives from Yahoo, the declining but still powerful tech giant, meet with Mark at Facebook's Palo Alto offices. The offer on the table is staggering: $1 billion in cash. Mark is 22 years old. $1 billion is a difficult sum to grasp for someone who was programming in a college dorm 2 years ago. He can retire, never worry about money, and pursue any passion. The board of directors pressures him to accept. Investors estimate massive returns. Employees imagine life-changing bonuses. But Mark says no. The decision seems irrational. Yahoo is offering a fortune for a company that still generates modest revenue. But Mark sees something others don't. Facebook's potential value isn't measured in current dollars, but in future users. And those users haven't arrived yet. Yahoo, insulted by the rejection, reduces the offer to $900 million. Mark interprets this as weakness, not incentive. The negotiation collapses. Years later, Yahoo will sell for less than what it offered for Facebook, while Facebook will be worth hundreds of billions. September 5th, 2006. Facebook launches a feature that will spark instant frenzy and eventual universal adoption, the news feed. Before this update, users had to visit individual profiles to see updates. The news feed radically changes this, displaying a continuous stream of friends' activity on a single page. Relationship status changes, new photos, status updates, all in real time. The reaction is explosive. Protest groups are forming within Facebook with names like Students Against the News Feed. Tens of thousands join within hours, denouncing the feature as an invasion of privacy and digital harassment. Mark faces his first real public relations crisis. The office is filled with tension. Employees frantically scan forums, trying to understand the intensity of the backlash. Should they roll back the feature? Make changes? Ignore the complaints? Mark publishes a public response. It's not exactly an apology. He explains that the news feed doesn't display information that isn't already public. It simply adds it for convenience. He promises to add more granular privacy controls. But it doesn't reverse the feature. That's the bet. It trusts that users will adapt once they experience the addiction of the infinite feed. He's right. Within weeks, the anger dissipates. The same users who protested now spend hours scrolling through the news feed, consuming friends' updates like a digital drug. The feature becomes so fundamental that it's impossible to imagine Facebook without it. Mark learns a crucial lesson. Users don't always know what they want until they have it. Innovation requires ignoring initial protests and trusting the long-term vision. It's a philosophy he'll apply again and again for better or worse. September 26, 2006. Facebook opens its doors to anyone over the age of 13 with a valid email address. It's no longer exclusive to students. It's universal. The decision was risky. University exclusivity was part of the brand, which made Facebook different from MySpace, the dominant social network at the time. But Mark recognizes that exclusivity is also a limitation. To truly grow, Facebook must be for everyone. The first few days are chaotic. Millions of new users sign up. Parents, professionals, retirees, people from remote countries. The demographics diversify dramatically. The original college user complained that their parents are ruining Facebook, but they continue to use it daily. In just a few months, Facebook surpasses 12 million users. MySpace is even bigger, but its growth is stagnating. Facebook, on the other hand, is accelerating exponentially. A shift in power is inevitable. Late 2006. Facebook moves into new offices at 1000 University, a Palo Alto address that will become legendary. The space is open, with long shared desks, glass walls, an atmosphere that blends startup with fraternity. Mark sets up his desk in the center of the open space, with no private office. He wants to be accessible, visible, part of the constant flow of engineers. He's repulsed by the traditional corporate hierarchy. He prefers meritocracy based on code and results. The internal culture is intense. Engineers are expected to work late, launch products quickly, and experiment without fear of failure. Move fast and break things is painted on the walls. Late-night hackathons become regular rituals, marathon coding sessions that produce features released days later. But there's a dark side to this intensity. Work-life balance is non-existent. Relationships form and collapse within the office. Burnout lurks. Some engineers thrive in this environment. Others crack. October 2007. Microsoft, the software giant seeking relevance in the social age, invests $240 million in Facebook in exchange for 1.6% of the company. The investment is notable not for its size, but for its implicit valuation, $15 billion. Facebook is now worth more than many century-old corporations, despite being only 3 years old and having modest revenues. Skeptics scoff. It's a bubble, they argue, reminiscent of the dot-com crash of the 2000s. No social network can justify such a valuation. Facebook will collapse like Friendster. It will decline like MySpace. But the numbers don't lie. Facebook now has 50 million active users. Every day, millions upload photos, update statuses, and send messages. Growth shows no signs of slowing. If anything, it's accelerating. Mark, now 23, is a billionaire on paper. His stake is worth billions. But he continues to live in a modest apartment, wearing identical gray T-shirts, driving a used Honda Acura. Money was never the point. Power was. And now, with half the planet still disconnected from Facebook, that power is only just beginning to unfold. But what happens when a platform created in a college dorm becomes the world's largest public square? Who controls what's said there? And who's responsible when things go wrong? 2008. Facebook dominates the United States, but the world is much bigger. Europe, Asia, Latin America, Africa, billions of people still aren't on the platform. The challenge is monumental. Each region has different languages, different cultures, and different internet infrastructures. Simply translating isn't enough. Facebook must adapt to local context without losing its fundamental identity. Mark convenes his internationalization team, a small group of engineers tasked with an impossible task, making Facebook work in every language, in every country, for every person. The solution is ingenious and slightly chaotic. They launched a collaborative translation tool where bilingual users can translate Facebook's interface into their native languages. It's crowdsourcing before the term was common. And it works. Within months, Facebook was available in Spanish, French, German, Italian, and Portuguese. Then came Arabic, Hindi, Mandarin, and Japanese. Each translation unlocked millions of potential users. International growth exploded. 2009, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia. Countries with young populations hungry for digital connection and tired of Orkut, the Google-owned social network that dominated the region. Facebook arrives with clear advantages. It's faster, sleeker, more intuitive. Photos load faster. The news feed is addictive. And, crucially, it's where Americans and Europeans are starting to be, creating an international network effect. Latin American users are migrating en masse. In Brazil, Facebook grows from hundreds of thousands of users to tens of millions in a year. In Mexico, it becomes the most visited website after Google. Argentina, Chile, Peru, all are falling in sequence like dominoes. Mark looks at the growth maps with analytical satisfaction. Every country Facebook conquers is a market its competitors permanently lose. Social media is a winner-takes-all game. Second place is irrelevant. February 9th, 2009. Facebook launches the most influential feature in internet history, the like button. It's absurdly simple. A blue thumbs up. A click that says, I saw this and liked it. No comment required. No effort required. Just instant recognition. The psychology behind it is profound. The like button gamifies social interaction, transforming each post into a quest for quantifiable validation. Users begin to modify their behavior based on how many likes they receive. They post more attractive photos, wittier updates, and content designed to maximize engagement. The impact is immediate. Time on site increases. Posts multiply. Users compulsively check their notifications, looking for the small dopamine hit of a red like. Critics will later argue that this simple button is responsible for mental health crises, digital addiction, and mass narcissism. But in 2009, it's simply a new feature that makes Facebook more sticky. October 2010. The Social Network, directed by David Fincher and written by Aaron Sorkin, opens in theaters worldwide. The film dramatizes the creation of Facebook, portraying Mark as a socially inept and morally ambiguous genius. Mark watches a private screening with a tense stomach. The film version of himself is brilliant but cruel, obsessed with revenge against a fictional ex-girlfriend, betraying friends without remorse. Jesse Eisenberg plays him with nervous tics and lightning-fast dialogue. The film is dramatized fiction. Mark knows this. Aaron Sorkin never interviewed him. Details are fabricated to serve the cinematic narrative. But millions of people will believe this version is true, that the film is a documentary rather than a drama. In public, Mark responds with disdainful humor. He criticizes the film for showing him wearing clothes he would never wear. But privately, the portrayal pains him. The film turns him into a cultural villain, the symbol of Silicon Valley's founding betrayal. Ironically, the social network does something no advertising campaign could achieve. It turns Facebook into an unavoidable cultural phenomenon. After its release, user growth accelerates. The film was intended to be critical, but it ends up being free advertising. July 2010. Facebook reaches 500 million active users, 500 million people. If Facebook were a country, it would be the third most populous country on the planet, behind only China and India. Mark celebrates modestly with the team. There's no extravagant party, no champagne toast, just a meeting where he reviews metrics and discusses the next billion. Because that's what's coming next. 1 billion, 2 billion, eventually the entire planet connected. The vision hasn't changed since the Harvard dorm. Only the scale has expanded beyond what anyone anticipated. But with 500 million users comes unthinkable responsibility. Facebook now hosts government conversations, protest organizing, news distribution, and the personal intimacies of hundreds of millions. It's critical social infrastructure, even though it was built by a handful of programmers in their 20s. December 2010, Tunisia. A street vendor named Mohamed Bouazizi sets himself on fire in protest against government corruption. His death sparks revolutions that will sweep the Arab world. Facebook and Twitter become crucial organizational tools. Protesters coordinate protests, share videos of police brutality, and mobilize crowds. Governments try to block the sites, but users find proxies and VPNs. Western narratives celebrate Facebook revolutions. Mark is portrayed as an accidental liberator, the technologist who gave a voice to the oppressed. It's a beautiful story, symbolic of the democratizing power of the internet. But the reality is more complex. Facebook doesn't cause revolutions. It only facilitates them. And the same tool that organizes protests also enables government propaganda, disinformation, and surveillance. Dictators learn to use Facebook as efficiently as revolutionaries. Mark watches events with fascination and concern. Facebook is influencing global geopolitics in ways he never anticipated. The power is intoxicating, but also terrifying. May 18, 2012. Facebook goes public on a NASDAQ in the most anticipated initial public offering in tech history. The valuation is $104 billion. Mark, now 28, rings the opening bell at the NASDAQ. He wears a hoodie instead of a suit, a calculated gesture of rebellion against Wall Street norms. At his side is Priscilla Chan, his girlfriend since Harvard, who will become his wife a day later in a surprise ceremony in their backyard. The stock opens at $38, giving Mark a personal fortune of $19 billion. He is one of the youngest billionaires in history, but the debut is disastrous. Technical problems on the NASDAQ delayed trading. The stock barely rose before stalling. Within days, the price fell below the opening price. Investors lost billions. Lawsuits were filed accusing Facebook and its bankers of exaggerating projections. Mark is facing his first real scrutiny from Wall Street. Analysts are questioning whether Facebook can really generate revenue commensurate with its astronomical valuation. The pressure is immense. 2012. Facebook is facing an existential crisis that few outside the company fully understand. The shift to mobile. Users are abandoning desktop computers for smartphones. But Facebook was designed for large screens, web browsers, mice, and keyboards. The mobile experience is clunky, slow, and frustrating. Even worse, Facebook has no clear mobile monetization strategy. Desktop ads are intrusive on small screens. If Facebook doesn't solve mobile, it will die like so many tech companies before it. Mark makes a radical decision. The entire company will pivot to mobile first. Each team must redesign its products assuming users only have smartphones. It's a massive reorganization that causes internal chaos. But it works. In 18 months, Facebook's mobile app is transformed into a fluid, fast, and addictive experience. More importantly, native mobile ads integrate seamlessly into the news feed, generating massive revenue. By 2013, more than half of Facebook users access the site primarily from mobile devices. This shift saves the company and redefines its future. April 9, 2012. Mark flies to the home of Kevin Systrom, founder of Instagram, to personally close a deal, $1 billion in cash and stock for the photo-sharing startup. Instagram has only 13 employees and zero revenue. $1 billion seems absurd. Critics scoff, calling it reckless spending and executive panic. But Mark sees what others don't. Instagram is growing virally, especially among younger users who find Facebook outdated. It's mobile native, visual first, and simple. If Facebook doesn't acquire Instagram, it will eventually compete with and potentially overtake Facebook. The acquisition closed quickly. In retrospect, $1 billion will be considered the bargain of the century. Instagram will eventually have over 1 billion users and generate tens of billions in annual revenue. But right now, it's another sign that Mark is playing chess while others are playing checkers. He's building not just a company, but an ecosystem of interconnected platforms that will dominate digital communication. October 4th, 2012. Facebook reaches 1 billion monthly active users. 1 trillion. 1 in every 7 people on the planet. Mark posts a public message reflecting on the milestone. He speaks of connection, community, and human potential. But he avoids mentioning the power implicit in that number. Facebook now has more citizens than any nation, more influence than most governments, and more data on human behavior than any institution in history. It is unprecedented power, accumulated in less than a decade, controlled by a man who was never elected, who doesn't answer to voters, who operates under minimal regulation. Celebrators of this milestone don't fully understand what it represents. Facebook has ceased to be a technology company and has become something new, a global communications infrastructure, a digital nervous system for human civilization. And with that power comes a question Mark can't yet answer. What responsibility does Facebook have to its users, to society, to truth itself? The answer to that question will define the next decade and will bring consequences no one at that celebration can anticipate. June 2014. A team of Facebook data scientists publishes an academic study revealing a secret experiment. They manipulated the news feeds of nearly 700,000 users to test for emotional contagion. Some users received more positive content, others more negative. Researchers measured whether this affected the emotions of users' subsequent posts. The results confirmed that it did. Emotions spread digitally like viruses. When the study is made public, the reaction is furious. Users feel betrayed, treated like unconsenting lab rats. Senators demand investigations. Psychologists question the ethics of large-scale, undisclosed experiments. Facebook responds with a lukewarm apology. They argue that all users agreed to terms of service that allowed data analysis. Technically legal, but morally murky. Mark remains publicly silent, but internally the controversy frustrates him. From his perspective, Facebook constantly experiments with algorithms to improve user experience. This experiment was more transparent than most, simply because it was published academically. But the lesson is clear. Facebook's power to influence human emotions on a massive scale is real, measurable, and terrifying. February 19, 2014. Facebook announces its acquisition of WhatsApp for $19 billion, the most expensive startup acquisition in history. WhatsApp is a messaging app with 450 million users, 50 employees, and almost no revenue. $19 billion seems insane. Facebook stock is plummeting. Analysts are declaring Mark has lost his mind. But the logic is identical to Instagram. WhatsApp dominates messaging in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. If Facebook doesn't acquire it, it will become a formidable competitor. It's better to acquire it now and consolidate its dominance. Jan Koum, WhatsApp co-founder and a Ukrainian refugee who once lived on food stamps, sells on one condition. WhatsApp will remain ad-free, focus on privacy. Mark agrees, though he knows internally that commercial pressures will eventually force changes. The acquisition consolidates Mark's empire. Facebook for broad social networking, Instagram for visual content, WhatsApp for private messaging. 3 of the 5 most used apps in the world now belong to him. 2015. Facebook becomes a primary source of news for millions of people. But there's a problem. The algorithm doesn't distinguish between verified journalism and fabricated garbage. Clickbait websites discover they can generate massive traffic by publishing sensationalist and completely false headlines. Pope Francis endorses Donald Trump goes viral, even though it's completely fabricated. Hillary Clinton sold weapons to ISIS is shared millions of times, even though it's fictional. The news feed amplifies these lies because they generate engagement. People click, comment, and share passionately. The algorithm interprets this as valuable content and shows it to more users. It's a vicious cycle that rewards misinformation. Facebook initially denies responsibility. They argue that they are a technology platform, not a publisher. They cannot and should not judge truth versus lies. That's censorship. But critics argue that Facebook has the power of billions of posts, and with that power comes editorial responsibility. They can't hide behind technological neutrality, while their platform poisons public discourse. Mark finds himself in an impossible philosophical position. Is Facebook responsible for the content its users post? And if so, who decides what's true? November 8, 2016. Donald Trump defeats Hillary Clinton in an election that shocks the world. In the weeks that followed, a disturbing narrative emerged. Facebook played a crucial role. Russian operatives bought targeted political ads, spreading disinformation designed to sow division. Fake pages posed as activist groups, organizing real protests by real people. Trolls amplified conspiracy theories. Facebook inadvertently became a weapon of information warfare. Its advertising tools, designed to sell shoes and vacations, were used to manipulate democracy. Initially, Mark rejects the idea that Facebook influenced the election. He calls it a pretty crazy idea. But evidence mounts. Congressional investigations reveal the depth of the manipulation. Mark is forced to admit that his platform was used in ways he never anticipated. The company that once boasted of connecting the world now faces accusations of shattering democratic trust. The techno-utopian optimism of the last decade is crumbling in recriminations and congressional hearings. 2017. In Myanmar, the military uses Facebook to spread hate propaganda against the Rohingya minority. Posts describe them as invaders, rapists, and existential threats. The rhetoric inflames violence, resulting in massacres and mass displacement. Facebook is the dominant platform in Myanmar, often confused with the internet itself. For millions, Facebook is their only source of information, and that information is poisoned by systematic hatred. United Nations human rights investigators declare that Facebook played a determining role in inciting genocide. It's a devastating accusation. The platform that supposedly connects and unites people is facilitating mass murder. Mark finally responds, promising to hire more Burmese-speaking content moderators, improve hate speech detection, and work with local experts. But the measures come too late. The damage is done. Hundreds of thousands of refugees are fleeing to Bangladesh. The Myanmar crisis reveals an uncomfortable truth. Facebook grew so rapidly that it failed to develop adequate infrastructure to moderate content across diverse cultures and languages. The scale that made Facebook powerful also made it dangerous. March 2018. The Guardian and the New York Times publish explosive investigations. Cambridge Analytica, a political consulting firm, illegally harvested data from 87 million Facebook users. The mechanics are complex but nefarious. An academic researcher created a personality app that users installed. The app not only collected data from those who installed it, but also from all their friends, exploiting Facebook's lax privacy rules. Cambridge Analytica uses data to create psychological profiles and target voters with personalized political propaganda during the Trump campaign and the Brexit referendum. Facebook knew about the abuse since 2015, but failed to inform affected users. It only acted when journalists were about to publish. The revelation sparked a tsunami of outrage. Regulators in multiple countries launched investigations. Users organized #delete Facebook campaigns. The company's stock plummeted. Mark, who avoided public appearances for days, finally issues an apology. He promises to audit all apps, restrict data access, and be more transparent. But the words ring hollow after years of promising privacy while allowing promiscuous access to user data. April 10, 2018. Mark returns to Washington to testify before Congress. This time, The atmosphere is radically different from previous friendly meetings. 44 senators from both parties take turns questioning him for 5 hours. The questions reveal profound technological ignorance. How does Facebook make money if it's free? Asks an 84-year-old senator. But also legitimate anger. Mark, dressed in his signature dark suit, responds with excessive caution. Senator, I'll review that with my team. Becomes an instant meme. He avoids specific commitments, vaguely promises to do better, and maintains a studiously neutral expression. The hearing resolves nothing, but it marks a seismic shift. Facebook is no longer the adorable startup that connects college students. It's a corporate power that requires serious government oversight. Behind Mark's outward calm lies a disturbing realization. His company grew faster than he could control it. The systems he built to connect people now connect them in ways that create chaos, violence, and manipulation. 2018 is remembered internally at Facebook as the year of hell. Scandals strike weekly. Every attempt to fix one problem reveals 3 more. User data inappropriately shared with device manufacturers. Security bugs exposing private information. Employees hired to research opposition against critics. Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg accused of covering up problems. Stock prices fluctuate wildly. Employees become demoralized. Recruiting new talent becomes difficult when Facebook is seen as a tech villain. Mark, typically optimistic about technological ability to solve problems, faces realities that code can't fix. Facebook's problems are human. Crowd psychology, perverse incentives, exploitation by malicious actors, moral dilemmas with no clear answers. It hires tens of thousands of content moderators. It invests billions in security and integrity. It constantly tweaks algorithms. But each fix creates new problems, unforeseen side effects that ripple through 3 billion users. Amid the chaos, Mark finds refuge in his personal life. Priscilla Chan, now his wife, is a pediatrician and philanthropist. Together, they established the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative, committing 99% of their Facebook shares to causes such as curing diseases, reforming education, and criminal justice. They have 2 daughters, Maxima, born in 2015, and August, born in 2017. Mark posts photos of fatherly moments, attempting to humanize his public image. The photos are calculated but not entirely fake. He genuinely loves his daughters and finds peace in simple household routines. He learns Mandarin to communicate with Priscilla's family. He barbecues in his backyard. He goes for morning runs with his dog, a Hungarian shepherd named Beast. These mundane moments contrast dramatically with the power he wields over global communication. But you can never fully escape it. Even during family dinners, your phone buzzes with crisis alerts. Another Facebook-related outbreak of violence. Another data breach. Another regulatory lawsuit. Late 2018, Mark publishes his annual resolution to fix Facebook. The post is unusually thoughtful, almost confessional. He acknowledges that Facebook was built on the optimistic premise that connecting people is inherently good. That premise, he admits, was naive. Connections can be toxic. Information can be a weapon. Communities can become radicalized. He promises to change Facebook to prioritize meaningful interactions over passive clicks. The news feed will be adjusted to show less viral content from media outlets and more from close friends. It's an implicit acknowledgement that Facebook had become a disinformation machine. The changes reduce the amount of time users spend on the site. Advertising revenue is affected. Wall Street is getting nervous. But Mark argues that it's necessary for long-term survival. Better a smaller, healthier Facebook than a massive, toxic one. As he writes this post in his office late at night, Mark reflects on the journey from that Harvard dorm. At what point did the tool for connecting friends transform into this complex, powerful, and dangerous thing? There's no simple answer. Only the certainty that the next chapter will require navigating impossible tensions between freedom of expression and safety, growth and responsibility, innovation and regulation. And this time, the entire world is watching every move. March 6, 2019. Mark publishes a 3,000-word manifesto titled A Privacy-Centric Vision for Social Media. It is the most significant announcement since Facebook's founding. The thesis is radical. Facebook will pivot from an open public square to private encrypted messaging. The future isn't public news feeds, but intimate conversations in small groups. It's recognizing that the experiment with sharing everything publicly failed, that people crave private digital spaces away from constant surveillance. Critics are skeptical. Is this genuine conviction or a PR strategy? After years of monetizing every byte of user data, will Mark really build systems that even he can't access? But the business logic is sound. WhatsApp and Instagram messaging are growing faster than Facebook. Young people are moving away from public messaging to private messaging. If Facebook doesn't lead this transition, it will be left behind. The plan calls for rebuilding critical infrastructure. Messages will be end-to-end encrypted by default. Data will not be stored permanently. The three main applications will be integrated to enable cross-platform messaging. 2019. Calls to break up Facebook are growing in volume and credibility. Presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren is making breaking up Facebook a central part of her campaign. She argues that Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp should be separate companies to restore competition. The Federal Trade Commission opens an antitrust investigation. Congressmen from both parties propose legislation to regulate social media. In Europe, regulators impose massive fines for privacy violations. Mark faces a real possibility of his empire being dismantled by legal force. He's responding with a dual strategy, technically integrating the three platforms so deeply that separating them is practically impossible, while publicly arguing that fragmentation will harm users. In private meetings with antitrust lawyers, Mark studies landmark cases. AT&T, Standard Oil, Microsoft. He learns from their mistakes. The key is to appear cooperative while systematically making fragmentation more difficult. It's legal chess played at the highest level. The pieces are billions of users and hundreds of billions of dollars. The board is the American and European legal systems, and Mark is playing to win. June 18, 2019. Facebook announces Libra, a global cryptocurrency backed by a basket of fiat currencies and governed by a consortium of corporations. The vision is bold: to create digital money that works globally without traditional banks. Facebook's 3 billion users could send money instantly, without fees, across borders. For the unbanked in the developing world, it could be transformative. The reaction is immediate and hostile. Central banks panic at the threat of a corporation issuing currency. U.S. regulators call hearings. Corporate partners, frightened by scrutiny, abandon the project one by one. Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, all flee. Mark testifies before Congress again, this time defending Libra. The members of Congress are unconcealed in their disdain. Do you really expect us to trust Facebook with our money after everything they've been through? Asks a representative. The project collapses under the regulatory weight. It is eventually relaunched as DM, with reduced ambitions, but never regains momentum. It is one of Mark's few clear defeats, a painful lesson that even Facebook has limits to its power vis-a-vis nation-states. March 2020. COVID-19 spreads globally. Governments impose quarantines. Offices close. Schools empty. The world goes into lockdown. Facebook is experiencing an unprecedented explosion of usage. People, physically isolated, are connecting digitally with desperate intensity. Video calls are increasing by 1,000%. Facebook groups are organizing community support, information sharing, and distraction from fear. Mark announces that Facebook will work from home permanently. It's a radical decision for a company that built elaborate campuses designed for in-person collaboration, but he acknowledges that remote work is an inevitable future. Facebook launches public health initiatives, COVID information centers, bans on medical misinformation, contact tracing tools. For the first time in years, Facebook is seen as a positive social resource rather than a threat. But misinformation is also exploding. Conspiracy theories about the origins of the virus, fake cures, vaccine panic. Everything is spreading virally. Facebook struggles to balance freedom of expression with public health responsibilities. Every moderation decision generates controversy. June 2020. Following the murder of George Floyd, massive anti-racism protests sweep the United States. Activists point out that Facebook allows hate speech and misinformation to spread. Civil rights organizations launched the Stop Hate for Profit campaign, calling on corporations to boycott Facebook advertising during July. Hundreds of major brands join in: Coca-Cola, Unilever, Verizon, Starbucks. It's a significant financial and reputational blow. Billions of dollars in advertising revenue evaporate. More importantly, it's a sign that even large corporations now view Facebook as toxic. Mark calls a meeting with boycott organizers. The conversation is tense. Activists demand structural changes, civil rights audits, stricter hate speech policies, more aggressive moderation. Mark promises reforms but rejects some fundamental demands. He won't accept being the absolute arbiter of truth or morality. He argues that Facebook must allow a wide range of speech, even offensive speech, to preserve freedom of expression. It's a philosophically consistent but politically costly position. The boycott continues. The pressure is mounting. November 3rd, 2020. The United States votes in the most divisive election in modern history. Facebook, burned by 2016, implements unprecedented measures. They ban new political ads a week before the election. They add contextual labels to posts about election results. They remove groups organized in militias. They reduce the vitriol of political content in newsfeed. But nothing prepares them for what comes next. Donald Trump, losing to Joe Biden, claims massive election fraud without evidence. His allies flood Facebook with claims of a stolen election. Millions of followers believe and share them. Facebook labels posts as disputed and adds links to verified information. But the labels are ignored. Misinformation spreads so fast that moderators can't contain it. Mark faces an impossible decision. Should Facebook remove content from a sitting president? Where's the line between free speech and violence prevention? It opts for a middle ground, labels scope reductions, but not total elimination. It's a compromise that satisfies no one. Left-wing critics argue that Facebook allows anti-democratic propaganda. Right-wing critics argue that Facebook censors conservatives. January 6, 2021. A mob storms the United States Capitol in an attempt to prevent certification of the presidential election. The world watches in horror as protesters smash windows, occupy the Senate chamber, and threaten lawmakers. In the hours and days that followed, clear evidence emerged. Facebook and other social media platforms were used extensively to organize the attack. Private groups coordinated logistics. Incendiary messages motivated participants. Live streams during the event fueled the chaos. It's the worst-case scenario critics have warned about for years, a social media platform facilitating direct political violence against democratic institutions. Mark, watching from home, knows he can't take incremental steps this time. 2 days later, Facebook indefinitely suspends Donald Trump's account. It's the most significant decision in the company's history, silencing a president. The reaction is explosive. Conservatives denounce tyrannical censorship. Progressives argue it came too late, after years of allowing incitement. World leaders question Mark's power to silence elected officials. Mark publishes a statement defending the decision, but acknowledging its extraordinary gravity. He establishes an oversight board, an independent panel to review content moderation decisions. This is an attempt to shift impossible responsibility onto outside experts. September 2021. Frances Haugen, a former Facebook employee, emerges as a whistleblower with thousands of leaked internal documents. The Facebook papers reveal what many suspected but couldn't prove. Facebook knew that Instagram harms teens' mental health, but publicly downplayed the research. Algorithms prioritize divisive content because it generates more engagement. Moderation rules are inconsistently applied, favoring powerful users. Haugen testifies before Congress with devastating calm. She's not an emotional activist, but an engineer presenting data. Her credibility is irrefutable. For Mark, it's a personal betrayal and a corporate crisis. Someone for within exposed attentions he internally acknowledged but publicly denied. The difficult decisions, the moral compromises, the prioritizing profits over well-being, all meticulously documented. The documents confer what had become a cultural consensus. Facebook knows it causes harm, but it chooses growth over responsibility. The company that once promised to connect the world is now seen as a deliberate predator of children and a destroyer of democracies. October 28, 2021. In a carefully choreographed corporate presentation, Mark announces that Facebook Incorporated is rebranding as Meta. It's more than a rebrand. It's a strategic pivot toward the metaverse, immersive virtual worlds where people will work, play, and socialize using digital avatars and virtual reality. Mark presents demonstrations of rendered virtual worlds, work meetings as holograms, and concerts in impossible digital spaces. He promises to invest billions in building this infrastructure. It's the biggest gamble of his career. Skeptics scoff. It's a transparent distraction from current scandals, attempting to shift the conversation from documented damage to speculative futures. The metaverse sounds like science fiction, not a solution to real problems. But Mark is genuine. He's been obsessed with virtual reality since Facebook bought Oculus in 2014. He sees the metaverse as a natural evolution of the internet, the next computing platform beyond mobile. He also sees an opportunity to redefine his legacy. Instead of being remembered as the man who broke Facebook, he can be remembered as the visionary who built the metaverse. It's a massive ambition, perhaps delusional, but undeniably bold. Late 2021, Mark, now 37, reflects on 2 decades since a Harvard dorm. He has built one of the most powerful corporations in history, amassed wealth beyond comprehension, and connected 3 billion people. He is also one of the world's most hated figures, a symbol of technological arrogance and corporate corruption. Congressional hearings, lawsuits, poisonous headlines. Everything takes its toll. His hair shows premature graying. The lines around his eyes deepen. Youthful confidence has been tempered with caution. Priscilla constantly reminds him of a human cost behind the metrics. Teenage girls with eating disorders exacerbated by Instagram. Families torn apart by misinformation. Weakened democracies. These aren't abstract numbers. These are real people suffering the consequences of decisions made in Menlo Park conference rooms. Mark tells himself that technology is neutral, that tools can be used for good or evil, but that narrative feels increasingly hollow. The tools he built have predictable consequences, structurally encoded in their algorithms. Can he redeem himself by building the metaverse? Or will he simply replicate Facebook's mistakes in new dimensions? The question haunts him as he looks toward the uncertain future, knowing the world is watching, waiting for the young man who connected the world to finally face the full price of that power. 2022, Meta announces financial results that shock Wall Street. Reality Labs, the division in charge of building the metaverse, lost more than $10 billion in a year, and it plans to lose similar amounts in the coming years. Investors panic. Meta's stock plummets, losing more than $700 billion in market value. It's one of the largest collapses in value in corporate history. Mark is facing a shareholder revolt. On quarterly calls, he fields increasingly hostile questions about when the metaverse will generate returns. His response is consistent. This is a long-term investment. Vision requires patience, and profits will arrive in 5 to 10 years. But internally, even loyal employees question the strategy. The Oculus Quest virtual reality headset is selling decently, but isn't a mass phenomenon. Horizon Worlds, Meta's flagship virtual world, attracts users in the thousands when it should be millions. The app feels empty, clumsy, and lacking in purpose. The legless avatars look awkward. The interactions are awkward. It's not the cinematic vision Mark promised, but a barely functional beta version. 2023. Meta announces mass layoffs. 11,000 employees in November 2022 and 10,000 more in March 2023. This represents 20% of the total workforce. Mark calls 2023 the year of efficiency. After years of rampant growth, Meta is leaning out, eliminating marginal projects, consolidating teams, and reducing expenses. The layoffs are traumatic. Employees who spent years building Mark's empire receive email notifications and instantly lose access to systems. The once vibrant campuses feel empty, almost ghostly. At a staff meeting, Mark apologizes. He acknowledges that he hired too aggressively in anticipation of growth that didn't materialize. But he also points to economic realities, high interest rates, an advertising recession, and intensified competition. What he doesn't mention, The layoffs also serve to appease investors furious about metaverse spending. It sacrifices current jobs to fund future vision. It's a brutal but strategically necessary calculation. While Meta is bleeding courage, an unexpected competitor is dominating youth attention. TikTok, the Chinese short video app. TikTok has what Instagram lost: raw authenticity, uninhibited creativity, and an addictive algorithm that shows content from everyone, not just celebrities. Teenagers are migrating en masse, abandoning Instagram like their parent abandoned Facebook. Mark recognizes a threat. Meta launches Reels, a blatant TikTok copy integrated into Instagram. Initially, users dismiss it as an inferior imitation, but Meta persists, tweaking algorithms, paying creators, and forcing Reels into feeds. Reels is gradually gaining traction. It doesn't catch up with TikTok, but it's stemming the user hemorrhage. It's a strategic defense, not an innovative victory. Meta is playing catch-up instead of leading. For Mark, it's humiliating. He spent his career anticipating trends and acquiring potential competitors. But TikTok emerged so quickly and under U.S. regulatory radar that he couldn't buy it. Now he must compete directly, a game he doesn't play well. July 2023. Elon Musk buys Twitter and proceeds to dismantle it chaotically. Mass layoffs, erratic product changes, advertisers fleeing. Mark sees an opportunity. Meta launches Threads, a direct competitor to Twitter and Instagram. The premise is simple: text-based conversations with your existing Instagram social network. Threads reaches 100 million users in 5 days, the fastest growth of any app in history. It seems like a landslide victory, evidence that Mark can still execute. But success is short-lived. Without distinctive features or a clear reason to stay, users leave as quickly as they arrived. Within weeks, activity collapses by 90%. Threads becomes a digital ghost town. Mark, characteristically, doesn't give up. Meta continues updating Threads, adding features, and integrating more deeply with Instagram. It's a war of attrition against Twitter that continues into 2024. November 2022. OpenAI launches ChatGPT, an artificial intelligence language model that can converse, write, and reason. Within weeks, it becomes a global cultural phenomenon. Mark immediately understands the implications. Artificial intelligence isn't just a tool, but a new platform, possibly as transformative as the internet itself. And Meta is lagging behind. Google has decades of AI research under its belt. Microsoft is investing billions in OpenAI. Amazon, Apple, all have advanced AI strategies. Meta has fragmented projects with no unified direction. Mark radically reorganizes priorities. The metaverse, while not abandoned, loses urgency. AI becomes a central focus. He aggressively recruits researchers, competes for talent with astronomical salaries, and invests in massive computing infrastructure. In July 2023, Meta launched Llama 2, an open-source language model that competed with commercial rivals. It was a brilliant strategic move. Instead of competing by selling access to AI, Meta gave it away, commoditizing the market and preventing rivals from monetizing advantages. September 2023. Meta launches Ray-Ban Meta Smart Glasses, the second generation of smart lenses developed with the iconic eyewear manufacturer. The lenses look like regular Ray-Bans, but include cameras, microphones, and speakers. Users can take photos, record videos, make calls, listen to music, and crucially, interact with the built-in AI assistant. They're significantly better than the first generation, which failed commercially, lighter with better battery life, and superior cameras. More importantly, the integration of AI makes them useful rather than just novelty gadgets. The glasses are selling decently, if not spectacularly, but they represent progress toward Mark's vision of ambient computing, devices that augment reality rather than replacing it with completely virtual worlds. It's an implicit recognition that full-fledged virtual reality headsets are niche. Most people don't want to be isolated in digital worlds. They want digital information superimposed on the real world. The headsets are a step toward that vision. Late 2023. Meta reports financial results that surprise analysts: solid revenue, improved margins, and stable user growth. The combination of mass layoffs, Aggressive Reels monetization and AI-powered advertising improvements all resulted in restored profitability. Shares recovered dramatically. Meta returned to near-historical valuations. Mark has weathered the storm. The years of 2022 and 2023 that seemed to threaten his empire finally resolved into a reassertion of his control. Critics who predicted collapse remain silent, but the victory is bittersweet. Meta is profitable but less respected, innovative but more cynical, powerful but less beloved. The youthful optimism that characterized Facebook's early era has been replaced with hard-nosed corporate pragmatism. Mark himself has changed. The gray T-shirts are now calculated by personal branding rather than genuine conviction. Interviews are more scripted. Spontaneity is gone, replaced by carefully controlled messages. 2024. The European Union approves a Digital Markets Act, a comprehensive regulation requiring Meta to allow interoperability with competing platforms. This means WhatsApp must allow users to message people on Signal or Telegram. Facebook Messenger must integrate with rival services. It's an existential threat to the closed ecosystem Meta has built. Meta is fighting legally, arguing that interoperability compromises security and encryption, but the EU remains steadfast. It's European regulatory power confronting U.S. corporate power. Mark travels to Brussels for meetings with regulators. The talks are tense, superficially diplomatic, but fundamentally adversarial. Europe sees Meta as a monopoly that must be broken up. Meta sees Europe as a bureaucracy stifling innovation. Eventually, Meta meets minimum requirements while delaying full implementation with legal recourse. It's a war of attrition that will continue for years. 2024. The United States faces another divisive presidential election. Meta, traumatized by previous cycles, implements restrictive policies. Fewer political recommendations, extensive labeling, and tools for users who wish to avoid political content. The result is paradoxical. Simultaneous accusations of censoring conservatives and enabling progressive misinformation. Both political sides hate Meta, just for different reasons. Mark recognizes that it's impossible to please everyone. The political center has collapsed. Any decision toward moderation infuriates 50% of the country. The only viable strategy is consistency in applying the rules, even if both sides consider them unfair. More fundamentally, Mark questions whether Facebook should be the arbiter of political truth. He prefers that users decide what to believe, that the marketplace of ideas regulate itself. But that libertarian philosophy collapses when false ideas cause real violence. Late 2024. Mark, now 40, is at a turning point. He has led Meta for 20 years, transforming it from a university project into a corporation that influences billions of lives daily. The metaverse remains largely aspirational. Headsets are improving, but mass adoption remains elusive. The complete vision of virtual worlds where humanity works, plays, and lives is years, possibly decades, away. But AI is delivering immediate results. Meta AI, integrated into WhatsApp, Messenger, and Instagram, answers questions, generates images, and assists with tasks. It's useful today, not a future promise. Smart glasses represent a middle ground, augmented reality instead of full virtual reality. It's a recognition that the future Mark envisions must be built gradually, not revolutionized overnight. Priscilla occasionally asks him if he'll ever retire, if he'll spend more time with his daughters while they're still young. Mark answers vaguely about eventual transitions, but they both know the truth. He can't quit. Meta is his life, his identity, his legacy. The question isn't whether he'll continue to lead Meta, but what he'll build in the next 20 years. Will it be the metaverse? Super intelligent artificial intelligence? Something completely new that no one anticipates? One thing is certain, Mark Zuckerberg isn't done. The young man who connected the world must now decide how that connected world will evolve in the uncertain future ahead. January 2025. Meta continues to dominate global digital communication. WhatsApp has over 2 billion users. Instagram is approaching 1.5 billion. Facebook, though less relevant for young people, remains indispensable for billions, especially in emerging markets. Mark, in his 40s, leads with pragmatism that would have been unthinkable for the 23-year-old idealist. He no longer promises to connect the world unconditionally. He acknowledges complexities, moral dilemmas, and unintended consequences. Meta's Menlo Park offices buzz with ambitious projects, AI models trained with trillions of parameters, augmented reality glasses projecting convincing holograms, photorealistic avatars that move naturally in virtual worlds. But beneath the technological optimism, a fundamental tension persists. Is Meta a net positive force? Or do its concentrated power, its addictive algorithms, its influence over public discourse pose an existential threat to human flourishing? The answer depends on who's asking. For billions, Meta offers invaluable connection, economic opportunity, and access to information. For critics, it represents corporate surveillance, psychological manipulation, and the erosion of shared truth. Mark is now the father of 3 daughters. Maxima is 9, August is 7, and Aurelia was born in 2023. He fiercely shields them from public attention, rarely sharing photos or details. Priscilla balances her medical career with extensive philanthropy. The Chan Zuckerberg Initiative operates with a multi-billion budget, funding biomedical research, education reform, and affordable housing in the Bay Area. It's a genuinely close marriage, though inevitably complicated by extreme wealth and fame. Priscilla provides a grounding, a perspective outside the Silicon Valley tech bubble. She reminds Mark that his work impacts real people with real lives. The girls grow up in a privilege that's hard to fathom. Homes with private security, elite education, vacations on private islands. But Mark and Priscilla try to instill relative normalcy. The girls do housework, attend local schools, and play with friends from diverse backgrounds. Mark wonders what his daughters will say when they're older and fully understand his legacy. Will they be proud? Ashamed? Both at the same time? Eduardo Saverin lives in Singapore and is a successful venture capitalist. His lawsuit with Facebook was settled years ago with a confidential agreement. He occasionally appears in the media discussing investments, but rarely mentions Mark. The Winklevoss twins are cryptocurrency entrepreneurs, billionaires in their own right. They also settled their lawsuit long ago. They continue to publicly insist that Mark stole Facebook from them, a narrative cemented in popular culture by the social network. Dustin Moskovitz left Facebook in 2008, co-founded Asana, and became an influential philanthropist. He remains on cordial terms with Mark, but not a close friend. Their paths diverge too far. Sean Parker, the chaotic early mentor, has also distanced himself. He faces his own demons, past addictions, regulatory controversies, relationships destroyed by unbridled ambition. He occasionally publicly criticizes Facebook, arguing that it was designed to exploit human psychological vulnerabilities. Mark observes these divergent destinies with a mixture of melancholy and relief. The friendships formed in the intensity of building Facebook didn't survive the strains of massive wealth, lawsuits, and real or perceived betrayals. It's lonely at the top. The only ones who genuinely understand the pressures of running Meta are other tech giant CEOs. Google's Sundar Pichai, Microsoft's Satya Nadella, Apple's Tim Cook. But even they are rivals as much as colleagues. 2025. Generative AI has reached a level where distinguishing real from synthetic content is almost impossible. Deepfake videos are perfect. Voices are cloned with seconds of audio. Images are generated that are indistinguishable from real photographs. Meta is facing an authenticity crisis. Its platform is flooded with AI-generated content. Fake influencers, fabricated news, non-consensual deepfake pornography, sophisticated scams. Mark convenes integrity teams to develop solutions. They implement digital watermarks on Meta AI-generated content, detection tools to identify synthetic images, and stricter identity verification for accounts. But it's a losing arms race. Fake content generators improve as quickly as detectors. Each security measure is evaded within weeks. More fundamentally, the philosophical question remains. Does it matter whether the content is authentic if it generates a real emotional connection? If an AI-generated image of a sunset inspires genuine joy, does its artificiality invalidate it? Mark has no clear answers. He only has an uncomfortable acknowledgement that Meta helped create a world where reality and simulation are increasingly indistinguishable. ByteDance, owner of TikTok, remains a formidable rival. Despite U.S. regulatory threats of a ban, TikTok maintains hundreds of millions of American users and dominates globally. Mark watches ByteDance with a mixture of admiration and frustration. Its algorithm is superior, its attention-grabbing ability unmatched, its execution ruthlessly efficient. But ByteDance has an advantage that Meta can't replicate: a lack of democratic scrutiny. They operate under an authoritarian government that prioritizes control over individual freedom. They can ignore privacy concerns, censor content arbitrarily, and collect data without legal restrictions. Meta, operating in Western democracies, faces ever-expanding regulations, endless lawsuits, employee activism, and user boycotts. It's like competing with one hand tied behind your back. Mark publicly argues that excessive regulations harm American companies compared to unrestricted Chinese rivals. But the argument sounds like a corporate excuse rather than genuine geopolitical concerns. Despite years of investment and persistent skepticism, signs of progress are emerging. Horizon Worlds, Meta's virtual world, now has millions of daily active users. Not the billion Mark dreamed of, but still respectable. A generation of teenagers and 20-somethings is growing up native to these spaces. For them, socializing as avatars in virtual concerts or immersive education classes is as natural as their parents' use of Facebook. The Quest 3 headsets are significantly better. Lighter, higher resolution, precise eye tracking, and haptic controllers that simulate touch. VR games reach cinematic quality, but mass adoption remains elusive. Headsets remain uncomfortable for long sessions. Killer app content doesn't yet exist. Mark's vision of remote work and virtual offices remains niche. Perhaps Mark was a decade ahead of his time, rather than fundamentally wrong. Or perhaps humanity simply doesn't want to live in virtual worlds as much as he anticipates. The verdict is still out. The Zuckerberg Initiative has donated billions to diverse causes. It has funded research that led to breakthroughs in treatments for rare diseases. It has built affordable housing in expensive communities. It has reformed criminal justice systems in multiple states. But philanthropy among the ultra-rich is inherently controversial. Critics argue that Mark shouldn't have so much power to unilaterally decide which causes deserve funding, that he should pay higher taxes instead of running private foundations. Mark responds as money goes further through strategic donations and measures than through government bureaucracy. He and Priscilla dedicate personal attention, ensuring that every dollar is used efficiently. It's a debate without a clear resolution. Both sides have valid points. The reality is that in a society of extreme inequality, billionaires inevitably wield disproportionate influence, whether through business, politics, or philanthropy. Late on a spring night in 2025, Mark sits alone in his Menlo Park office. The buildings are empty, most employees working remotely. Only the hum of distant servers breaks the silence. He reflects on the arc of his life. From a child programming in his father's dental office to controlling a platform used by 3 billion people. It's such an improbable rise that if it were fiction, it would seem like an unlikely fantasy. Did he use that power wisely? The question haunts him. He connected the world, yes, but he also facilitated disinformation, polarization, and mass corporate surveillance. He created tools of liberation that are also tools of oppression. There is no satisfactory answer. Only recognition that technological power on this scale is fundamentally ambiguous, generating both good and bad consequences simultaneously in ways that are impossible to cleanly separate. Mark thinks about the alternatives. If he had sold Facebook to Yahoo for $1 billion, would anyone else have built something similar? Almost certainly. The demand for social media was inevitable. If not Facebook, then another platform. But would that alternative platform have been better or worse? More responsible or more careless? It's impossible to know. We can only be certain that Mark made the decisions he made, for better or worse, and now he must live with the consequences. Young employees at Meta look at Mark with a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. To them, he's a historical figure, the legendary founder who built an empire from scratch. But it's also a relic of a different era. 23-year-old engineers today grew up with Facebook already existing. They don't remember when social media was an experimental novelty. To them, it's basic infrastructure like electricity. These young people are more cynical about technology, more aware of unintended consequences, and more skeptical of promises of disruption. They've seen the crises, read the scandals, and watched the congressional hearings. Mark tries to mentor, sharing lessons from 2 decades, but he acknowledges a generational gap. The challenges he faced, scaling quickly, monetizing effectively, competing with rivals, are different from today's challenges. AI potentially displacing human workers, virtual worlds raising questions of identity and reality, algorithms potentially controlling human thought. Eventually, he'll have to hand over the reins. The question is when and to whom. Is there a successor who shares his vision but avoids his mistakes? Or will Meta's future leadership require a completely different kind of person? October 2025. Mark turns 41. He spent half his life building and defending Facebook, now Meta. In a rare interview with a journalist who has followed his career for years, Mark reflects on his legacy. "I don't know how it will ultimately be judged," he admits. "I just know that I try to build tools that connect people and give everyone a voice." The journalist points out the contradictions. Giving everyone a voice also gave extremists a voice. Connecting people also exposed them to manipulation. And democratizing communication also concentrated unprecedented power. Mark nods, not defensively but with weary acceptance. "Every powerful tool is double-edged," he replies. Language enables poetry and propaganda. The printing press spreads knowledge and misinformation. The internet connects and isolates. Facebook is no different. It's a philosophical response that avoids specific responsibility, but also contains a fundamental truth. Technology amplifies both the best and the worst of humanity. The interview ends with a final question. If you could go back to 2004, would you do anything differently? Mark pauses for a long moment before answering. "I would move more slowly at times. I would listen more to warnings about unintended consequences. I would invest more in safety and content moderation. But," he continues, "I wouldn't change the fundamental decision to build Facebook. The world needed tools for connection. If I hadn't built them, someone else would have. And I don't know if they would have been more careful than I was." Mark Zuckerberg's story has no clear conclusion because it continues to unfold. In 2025, Meta remains dominant but challenged. Mark remains powerful but challenged. The future remains uncertain. The young man who programmed in a Harvard dorm room 21 years ago fundamentally transformed human communication. 3 billion people use their platforms daily. That's genuine, consequential, historic power. But that power came at a price. Strained democracies, compromised youth mental health, eroded privacy, and fragmented truth. Consequences Mark didn't fully anticipate, but for which he is undeniably responsible. Is he a hero or a villain? Visionary or a warning? The answer is probably both simultaneously. A deeply ambiguous figure whose legacy will be debated for generations. One thing is certain. Mark Zuckerberg connected the world. And now we all live with the consequences of that connection, navigating a reality where distances have disappeared but new divisions have emerged, where voices have been amplified but truths have been obscured, where power has been concentrated in the hands of few who control the platforms that billions use with no real alternative. The story of a young man who connected the world is also the story of how that connected world became more complex, more fragile, more powerful, and more dangerous than anyone in that Harvard dorm could have imagined. And that story, for better or worse, is still being written.